And today we're checking out Civil War II, The Truth About It All, number 2, by Comic Story. Now, this is the second part of going over the whole Civil War II angle, Marvel Comics. And last time we left off, we just learned that in another vision, we saw Miles Morales, the Spider-Man, killing Steve Rogers. I'm not sure what that means, but we're about to find out. How about we check it out? I'll have a link down below, as well as the link to your creator's channel. If you like this, like, and subscribe. Let's go.
What if your greatest ally was working against you?
Well, that's not ominous at all. Oh. Nice.
Welcome to the
I like
Complete
the
Story
new
series, where I
animations
take trade paperbacks and single issues, and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then, I read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Today, we're going to be covering the second half of the Civil War II storyline. When we last left off, a new Inhuman had been discovered that had the ability to see into the future, and Captain Marvel used the Inhuman to preemptively act against potential crimes. But Tony Stark discovered the Inhuman was only seeing a possible future, and none of the acts that he had seen were guaranteed to happen. A divide was formed between our heroes, ones who wanted to act on those visions and ones who wanted to continue on as normal. Because the question came down: at what percentage do you act? If there was only a 10% chance that those visions were accurate, should you still arrest people? The heroes were brought together in a big fight, and it ended when Ulysses had another vision, one where he saw Miles Morales holding the dead body of Steve Rogers. Why would Spider-Man kill Captain America? In order to understand that, we need to have a look at what's been happening to Steve Rogers. Recently, he lost his super soldier serum and it turned him old and gray. But in the event Avengers Standoff, a cosmic cube had been changed into a child, and that child, Kobik, to turn him back to normal, into the classic Captain America. Except there was one thing that happened that no one knew about. Kobik was working for the Red Skull, and she didn't back classic Captain America. She altered his history in its entirety. Steve had now been raised by Hydra with the intention of becoming the ultimate secret agent, because Steve Rogers now worked for Red Skull. It all began at the night of the party where they were celebrating the destruction of the Celestial. Steve had planned to have the entire tower destroyed. He was going to kill as many heroes as he could, but his plan changed that night because he learned of the Inhuman Ulysses, and he began to realize that if Ulysses can see the future, then he would be able to, in fact, foresee and stop many of Steve's plans. The doctor he was working with insisted that they kill Ulysses, and while Steve disagreed at first, he didn't see any other options. So that night he broke into the Inhumans base with the intention of ending Ulysses' life. Except that was the same night that Tony Stark broke in, and once again, his plans were shot. So he had another idea. He sent a letter to Bruce Banner, one that contained research on gamma radiation, the supposed cure for the Hulks. And thus, Ulysses had a vision where Banner was doing research on gamma radiation, and he was going to kill everyone, drawing all of the heroes to his home, and then Bruce Banner was killed by Clint Barton. The plan was simple: stage the visions and redirect everyone away from him, and that would decrease the possibility that Ulysses would receive a vision about him. It was working just fine, until the of Miles Morales killing Steve Rogers was sent out. Luckily, no one knows Steve's true intentions, do they? Or do they know that he's been altering the visions and steering them away? But what's gonna happen now? We go back to the battlefield where everyone has just seen the vision, and Tony looks at Carol. I told you this would happen. Did I not tell you? You're turning on children now. I'm not turning on him, Tony. Carol, this kid, in the short time that he's been at Avenger, has done nothing but good. This isn't Banner. There is no gray area here. I'm not turning on him. I want him to come with us to ensure that this doesn't happen, Tony. The arguing continues, with no one really knowing what to do, but in the end, Tony decides to let Miles decide for himself. Steve steps forward. May I? He walks over to Miles and he takes a knee in front of him. Hi. Hi. Why did you pull your mask up? I couldn't breathe. Put it back. The mask represents something. It represents who you are. You're Spider-Man, and that means something to people. It means a lot. I would never do what that vision showed. I would never do that. I know, son. I don't know what to do now. What do you want to do? I want to go home. Then do that. We'll figure out the rest later. Carol yells at the captain. This isn't your call. He has a right to go home, Carol. But we can keep him safe. We can prevent this. We can make sure it doesn't happen. He didn't do anything wrong. Just like Bruce, just like Rhodey. Carol is speechless. Thor walks over, taking Miles by the arm, and takes off to return him back home. Maria Hill then takes that as a chance to step forward and tell everyone that they're under arrest for the destruction that they've caused in the capital. But everyone begins to teleport out, and then Medusa warps the Inhumans home, leaving Carol alone. As they soar through the skies, Miles asks Thor to leave him. He just wants to be left alone. And she leaves him on a roof, understanding. He falls to his knees and he takes his mask off. Tears begin to roll down his face as the vision is still fresh in his mind, and he screams out! Things are rocky across the board. The Inhumans have left to protect Ulysses. The Guardians are bunking with Carol since their ship is gone. And Tony's team is beginning to divide, with people wanting no part of this any longer. People are switching sides, like Black Panther going over to Tony's side, as things are heating up and the predictions are becoming less likely to become accurate. But after long debates on their next actions, Tony turns to Steve, telling him, "What happens next is up to you and Spider-Man." Carol, on the other hand, is sitting on a roof of one of the buildings looking over New York. How could it come to this? How could her plans fall apart so fast? Ulysses was supposed to be the answer to everything, but now the vision shows one of her friends dead by a hero's hands. Maria Hill sat with Peter Quill, Storm, and Jean Grey to let Carol know that they found Spider-Man. He's exactly where the vision said that he would be, on the steps in the Capitol, waiting. Ulysses is now standing at the edge of New Attilan, the home of the Inhumans, in a trance. No one knows what's going on, but Ulysses has actually traveled somewhere. Into the future, maybe into the past, or maybe he's in a different universe. He stumbles and he falls down a cliffside, landing in front of a big hulking green guy. And he looks at him and declares, "Meat." He raises his hands to crush Ulysses, but suddenly a man in a trench coat and hat leaps onto his back, stabbing him and tearing him in two. The man in the hat walks back to his horse, and Ulysses asks, "Are you Wolverine?" Wolverine doesn't answer, so Ulysses asks him, "What year is this?" Wolverine stops. "Are you okay, kid?" I don't think I'm supposed to be here." "What year do you think it is, kid?" "I don't know. There's no way to tell." "What are you?" "I'm an Inhuman." "Guess you missed the last bus. The Inhumans left the planet back when the world still looked like the world. They did. Where are we?" "Looks like Jersey." "What happened?" "Tony Stark happened." "What do you mean by that? What happened here?" But then Ulysses starts to fall back into his own time and place, and he yells out, "Tell me what Tony Stark did!" "Everyone knows what he did. He pushed her too far." "Who's her? Who's her?" Ulysses says as he warps back to the present day. Meanwhile, word gets back to S.H.I.E.L.D. that Miles is now on the steps of the Capitol. Carol tells Maria to relay to the local PD that they need to stand down. She'll do this one herself. As the police leave the area, Miles looks out and he sees Steve Rogers standing there. Back in New Attilan, Ulysses turns to Medusa and tells her to call Carol. They have to stop the fighting. They can do this. Back at the Capitol, Carol jumps out of the helicarrier to fly over to the Capitol, while Steve walks up to Miles. "Why are you here?" "Same reason you're here, to prove it doesn't happen." "Exactly right. Thank you for believing in me." Carol then arrives, hovering above them. "What do you expect me to do when you arrived here like this?" "I don't know, maybe leave me alone like the cops did?" "The cops left because I told them to. Please tell the kid I'm not Satan, Cap." "She's not Satan." "Thank you. Now can you please come with me so that we can get you somewhere safe?" She reaches her hand out, and a shield forms around Miles. Carol turns back. "Tony Stark, be a man and face me." "I wasn't hiding. I was giving you one last chance and that was it." And then out of nowhere, Tony rockets in with Hulkbuster armor. He hits the ground with everything and Carol catches the punch, throwing him back into the sky. He launches a missile at her, but she dodges while Captain America ducks behind his shield, protecting him from the explosion. The two Titans launch into the air and begin to throw everything at each other while Miles is yelling to let him out of this bubble. Back and forth they go until Carol has had enough and she uses everything to punch through Tony Stark's chest. Steve Rogers and Miles both look up at that hit, and even S.H.I.E.L.D. is monitoring the situation. Blue Marvel tells Maria Hill that she needs to send them in. They can stop this, but she tells him Carol said she has everything under control. It needs to be one-on-one, otherwise we'll have every superhero slugging it out on the steps of the Capitol. That's when Medusa calls her up, telling her Carol has to stop. She has to stop now. Tony and Carol go back and forth, with Tony's armor falling apart. "I told you that if you interfered again, I wouldn't be holding back. You also said that you wouldn't arrest a kid for something he didn't do." And then Tony fires a missile at Carol, which she dodges, but Steve gets hit by the full blast of them. The readings come back that Steve is alive, but he's unconscious, and Tony goes back to fighting Carol while Miles is punching the bubble, trying to get out. Meanwhile, back in New Attilan, Medusa tells the Inhumans Hill hung up on her, so the decision is made to get Ulysses himself to the Capitol to try and stop Carol. Back at the battlefield, Carol winds up with another super-powered punch, shattering pieces of Tony's arm off as he catches it. And that's it. Maria Hill tells all of the superheroes to get in there and put an end into this. They all land in front of Miles to see him in the bubble, and the first thing that they need to do is get him out. While this is going on, Carol and Tony continue to throw everything at each other. Slight problem though. Tony's armor is failing, and his AI informs him of that. Everyone watches as Carol hits Tony in the head with everything, and as the suit falls to the ground, she begins to try and pry the mask off. Seeing that failing, she knees the helmet with everything, and then she lands on top of him, ready to throw a final punch, ready to end this right here. But before anyone can stop her, she hits him. She hits Tony with everything, completely shattering the suit. As he falls to the ground from the explosion, everyone sees a white light, and then Ulysses is showing everyone another vision. He's showing them all of the visions. He's showing every possible future to everyone. He shows a world where the monsters are fighting the monsters led by Karnak. One where the X-Men and the Sentinels are working together with only Nova to stop them. Another time and place where Spider-Man killed Captain America and the Capitol is falling. A future where the Inhumans are fighting for their lives against a robot invasion. And yet another one where the Sentinels have won against the X-Men. A world where only Carol lives up to stand against Ultron is shown. And finally a future where Odin's son is back as Thor and he's fighting Loki. Everyone sees all of these possibilities and potential futures. And a voice tells Ulysses, "You are one of us now." Everyone looks up to see Eternity standing there in a white light. And he tells him, "You have shown the Earth all that you can. You are now a part of the greater universe. There is more than just the Earth if you choose to join us." Ulysses smiles, finally knowing his true purpose and where he's supposed to be. And he vanishes, telling everyone, "Thank you." Everyone then appears back at the steps of the Capitol, with Miles holding someone again. But this time, he isn't holding Steve Rogers. He's holding a critically injured Tony Stark. Sometime later, Hank explained that Ulysses evolved into something beyond human. And then Carol and him look down at Tony Stark in a device that is meant to keep him alive. Hank says that he can't operate or work on Tony because he's been experimenting with his own body for years. And Hank is worried what would happen if he even took blood. While they have no way to really save him, whatever Tony did to himself is keeping him alive. And it kept Carol from becoming the woman that killed Tony Stark. Hank tells her, "You know he wasn't fighting you, right? He trusted you. You popped open a dangerous door, Carol, and deep down, maybe very deep down, he knew that you could be trusted. You could have saved millions with it, but he was worried about who would come after you. He knew once you made profiling a thing, made it into the norm, how long would it take before someone else would use it for something less noble? He knew what would come next. He was a futurist to the end." And with that, they sealed Tony up in the device keeping him alive. Carol went to see the man in the White House, where she explained that the superhero community is pretty divided now. Some are overwhelmed, some are just trying to hang on. Some think that they know what to do while others are lost. Others are doubting themselves, some wounds will never heal, and some have been inspired to do something new. The man in the White House tells her, "The winner gets the prize. What project of yours would you like funded?" And she tells him she has a few ideas. But we aren't done just yet. If Steve Rogers had manipulated the entire event by setting up the banner thing and helping the situation escalate, what did he think of the vision of him dying at the hands of Miles? Why would he go to the Capitol steps when Miles was there? You see, following that, he returned to his base, where the doctor that he had been helping told him that he needed to kill that boy. Otherwise, he was going to die. Steve told him that the boy would be protected, and to top it off, he's going with Stark and everyone to the Capitol. The doctor was really confused. "Why would you go to your own death?" And Steve explained, "While everyone was looking at Spider-Man holding my dead body, I did what I was trained to do. I looked at everything. And what I saw wasn't just my death, but it was my death on the day that Hydra was finally victorious. I won't die in those steps tomorrow. It will come sometime later, and when it does, it'll be worth it." Now that concludes our Civil War II storyline. Now, the whole Steve Rogers manipulating things really didn't play a larger role, and that's because a lot of the actual plot to Civil War II is told in the tie-ins, and we're going to be explaining Steve Rogers working for Hydra and more of this, how he manipulated Civil War II, in another video explaining Steve Rogers' participation in this. There's also a lot more going on, like, what did She-Hulk do about the entire Hulk situation? How did Amadeus Cho feel about Hulk being removed? And what is the fallout of Rhodey's death? I hope you guys are looking forward to a lot more Civil War II content, because all of the which explain a lot more of what happened are coming out. And until then, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ComicStorian, and I'll see you next time right here.
Wow. That was something. I think Captain America was behind all of this. That vision of Morales killing him was just some warning of a potential Hydra victory. Now, as he said, there's a bunch of tie-ins that tell, like, a bigger picture of Civil War II. But yikes. I think he caused Bruce Banner's death. Yeah. I mean, I knew Steve was part of Hydra from the 2016 moments I did with Watch Mojo, but man, I think he actually manipulated the whole Civil War II thing as the villain. That's something. So that's about it for me right now. I hope you all enjoyed, and today we're checking out Civil